hills are alive to the sound of a Cedia. Too good. Once upon a time, from a land far, far away, came a manufacturer that developed their cars on the rally circuit and then sold it to you in the showrooms. Mitsubishi Motor Corporation, in my growing up years, my impressionable years of the 90s and the 2000s, their cars were dominating rallying. And when India opened up in the 90s, when liberalization happened, Mitsubishi were one of the first manufacturers to come into India, and they launched this car, the Mitsubishi Lancer. Now, at one point in time, the Lancer was as desirable as a Honda City. May not have been as fast as a Honda City, but it handled better. It had more genuine heritage and rallying chops. It also looked much cooler in the SFX trim. And then later on came the Cedia that dominated Indian rallying for the longest time. And this was the car that I cut my rallying teeth with. This Lancer, it formed the base for the 4, 5, 6, the Mitsubishi Evo, and the Cedia was the base for the 7, 8, and 9. Genuine motorsport rallying heritage. And this episode of Gone But Not Forgotten is a homage to the ultimate JDM cars. Before we go ahead, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and share this video with like-minded enthusiasts, because this is a very important story. The Lancer came to India in 1998 in a joint venture with Hindustan Motors. You got to remember that back then, Hindustan Motors was still a behemoth. The ambassadors were still selling and things were opening up, more foreign manufacturers were coming in, and they brought in the Lancer. Now, the Lancer, it got a 1.5 litre petrol engine and a 1.8 litre diesel engine. Later on, there would be a 1.8 litre petrol engine also with an automatic transmission. But this 1.5, this was the most popular engine along with the diesel. And it also came in this cool body kits. So there was the SFX, which was a sporty body kit. There was the SLX, which was the more luxury oriented trim. And there was this, the GLX. Of course, this has been pimped out, obviously, because this car is owned by enthusiasts. And all Mitsubishis today are owned by enthusiasts. They're not sensible buys, but they are buys for the enthusiasts. That head over mind or mind over head or whatever matter, that is what Mitsubishi does so well. Now, this car with the 1.5 engine, the 1.5 engine wasn't a firecracker, to be honest. But the platform, this CT9A platform, that was the roots for Mitsubishi Evo rally cars back in the day. It had independent rear suspension. It handled really well. JK, they made the first rally car based on the Lancer, but that was a Group A rally car. And when they launched it, the very next year came Group N regulations, and those cars were outlawed. But this car, in all our track tests, it actually performed better in terms of handling than the Honda City. Only problem was its engine. It was no match on the City VTECs. We've had a lot of fun on our Gone But Not Forgotten series, but here, today, we're not going to make any silly jokes, because these cars were no jokes, no joking matter. They were serious cars, excellent in terms of engineering. They came at a time also when India was just getting these so-called foreign cars, MNCs coming and making cars or assembling cars in India. These cars signaled the dawn of a new era. And for me, when I was growing up, they were the ultimate symbols of having arrived in life. The Lancer, it was launched with a 1.5 petrol engine, that's the one that we are driving, and it made 87 bhp when new. This engine was also the first 3-valve head engine in the country. Okay, it was not very quick, but those days, you didn't get 100 bhp cars. The City VTEC, which was the first to cross 100 bhp, that would come years later. But of course, there was the regular City, and when you compare this engine with the regular City engine, the City, it revved better, it felt freer, it was also a lighter car, and that made it quicker. But this engine, it is stocky, it is refined. Of course, over the years, it's probably lost a few horses, and all this aero addenda that you see on the car, it really has no practical purpose other than turning heads. But I won't make stupid jokes about it, because this shows that cars like these are bought by enthusiasts. You can get an old Lancer now for 75,000 bucks, which is not much money. And then you slap on your personality on it. When we were young also, when we were young and stupid, we also did silly things. We also loved wings. A wing was a sign of a fast car. And I encourage it. I'm all for it. Do what makes you happy. Cars are supposed to make you happy. And I love the fact that millennials, well, a few millennials still know the worth of a Lancer. They're still buying a Lancer, still slapping tons of stickers on it. It's such a cool thing. Now, what was the highlight of the Lancer? Well, it was definitely not the engine, but the handling, the platform, the chassis, that was superb. Contemporary road tests back in the day, 1998, they said that the ride quality of the Lancer was second only to the E-Class. And even today, the ride is excellent. Of course, by current standards, it feels a little soft, but the handling is actually still good. You got to remember, this is still running on 13-inch wheels. Those days, 13-inch wheels were the standard, and 14-inch wheels were like, whoa, 14-inch wheels. In fact, the SFX, which was the body-kitted Lancer, no changes mechanically, but it just had a body kit and 14-inch rims, which looked super cool, really, really cool. Back when I was at Overdrive, we had a Lancer on long-term test, and we did tons of miles on it. It was very efficient, very comfortable, and extremely reliable. In fact, the whole reason why they gave us the car on long-term test was to highlight the fact that it doesn't cost much to own and maintain a Lancer, and that is a fact. Of course, the standard Lancer, it focused more on comfort than handling, but you push it and the sophistication of the chassis actually came alive. But no matter how good the Lancer was, fact also remains that the Honda City, because of its engine, was nicer, and the other manufacturers, they updated and upgraded their products far quicker than HM Mitsubishi. In fact, from 1998 to 2006, that's how long they continued with the Lancer, and that is a very, very, very long lifespan. And now, let's go check out the Cedia. In 2006, the Lancer was not discontinued. Back then, nobody threw anything away. So the Lancer continued, but Mitsubishi also brought in the Cedia. Now, this was the evolution of the Lancer. World over, the Lancer Cedia, it replaced the earlier Lancer, but in India, this was called only the Cedia, and it came with a larger engine. This had the 2-liter petrol engine, and it did not have a diesel engine, and that's the reason why you do not see so many of these Cedias on the road, because in those days, diesel cars were extremely important. One of the big reasons for the earlier Lancer's success was the diesel engine, but this did not get a diesel, and that's why it did not have too many takers. Now, initially, when we drove the Cedia, we weren't big fans of it because the 2-liter engine, it was not a motorsport derived engine, and it honestly wasn't very fast. It was also detuned for India and for our Indian roads and our fuel conditions. But in 2010, I finally took a Cedia Sport and went rallying, and since then, I've been a lifelong fan of the Cedia and of the Mitsubishi. The engine, like I said, not very powerful, but the platform, the handling, the base of this platform was so good, it made for a brilliant handling rally car. My very first rally, I took off on 4 wheels over all the crests, full confidence. My very first rally, I finished on the podium. This car was responsible for making me a rally driver. How can you not smile at this? It reminds me of my rallying days. Of course, this is not stock. This is not how they sold the Cedia. But this is also the reason why people buy Cedias, because they are enthusiasts. They love a bit of fun and games. And the Cedia, it is the ultimate enthusiast car. Just listen to that. This is a Borla blowtorch or something. Too good, too good. The pedals perfectly positioned for a bit of heel and toe. Man, I could cane this all day long. And the steering, hydraulic power steering. This is steering that talks to you. In 2010, Mitsubishi launched the updated Cedia Sports. Now, that did not have any mechanical changes, but aesthetically, it got a proper Momo steering wheel. And that wheel was in my rally car for, I think, the entire first season. It got OZ alloy rims, and it had leather seats and all of that. It got a different grille, and it had more stickers on the outside. And that Cedia Sports was my rally car for 4 seasons. I think it looked good. We made lovely stickers with it. Back when I was at Overdrive, they actually let me go out, rally, spend all the time doing rallying and also creating a lot of content, a lot of stories around rallying. I was 32 when I did my first Indian National Rally Championship event. It was the tarmac rally at Nasik, no testing, nothing, went blind into the rally. But I insisted that I would use my left foot on the brake, I would remove the booster on the brake, do it properly so that I would learn. And that rally I finished on the podium, finished 3rd on my very first rally. The next year at the Nasik rally, I finished on the overall podium. I was 3rd on the overall podium. Those cars built by Red Rooster Performance and Leela Krishnan, they were such good rally cars. And even driving one on the road today, it reminds me of how good those rally cars were. Later on, of course, we moved to the Polo. And those cars were more nimble, but they didn't handle as well as the Cedia. The Cedia, it taught me so much about handling, about dynamics, all the stuff that we talk about in our road tests these days, in all our drives. That is all because of the motorsport experience that I have. That taught me what compression, what rebound, what damping, what a sophisticated chassis is supposed to and not supposed to do. And it is all thanks to the Cedia. Now, funny things, when they launched the Cedia, that time they had it in the sport version, they had it in the luxury version, and they also had a CNG version. And initially there wasn't much demand for the sport, so they canned that. And they only sold the luxury version, which was awful because this is a car which has genuine motorsport roots. This platform is the same platform as the Evo 7, 8 and 9. In fact, it is so similar that you can get the hardware for the Evo 8, Evo 9, and it bolts onto the Cedia. A lot of tuners in India, that's how they've built Evos. That's how you see so many Evos in India. They've all been built off the Cedia. It's bolt on, it's the same platform. And that's why it is so good when you take it on a motorsport event. Because the chassis is brilliant. Independent rear suspension, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the last cars that got independent rear suspension. After that, everybody cottoned on to the fact that a torsion beam rear, it is cheaper, it is more space efficient. But because of the suspension layout, the chassis, motorsport honed chassis, it went around corners so well. It still goes around corners so well. Except the engine. This engine, the 4G94 engine, it was never raced, it was never rallied, it wasn't even turbocharged by Mitsubishi. All of Mitsubishi's heritage is turbocharging, right? This engine, they never intended it for it to be turbocharged. This is a regular luxury car engine. And it was not very quick. 118 bhp or 114 bhp when it was launched. And when we went rallying with it, we really struggled to get more power out of it in Group N spec. Of course, in Group N plus spec, they got a lot of power out of it. But Group N, you couldn't change much. Like this car, intake, exhaust, we also had an ECU on it. So it wasn't very fast, but it could go around corners very fast. And that was the brilliance of this car. Just look at the way it still handles. Regular 15-inch tires, good ride, good handling, good steering. If you're an enthusiast today, this is definitely a car I would recommend. Definitely. It's a shame that Mitsubishi didn't really bring great engines into India. They didn't bring the Myvec, which was their version of VTEC. Otherwise, they would probably have a much, much bigger fan following. But this was a problem. This big gap between second and third, we also struggled with it in rallying. So you're going up and you're struggling in third, and then you downshift to second and you're in a very high revs. That big gap in the gear ratios, that was another problem with the car. And it also highlighted the fact that it wasn't a very quick car. The City VTEC of the time was faster than the Cedia, but the Cedia was more robust. There will be a time when everything will be electric. I shudder at the thought, but it is a fact. There will be a time where everything is electric, and that's the time when you will have to conserve some of the highlight internal combustion engine vehicles. You will save your Porsches, you will save your Mitsubishi Evos, and if you can't afford an Evo, you will save a Cedia. And future generations that will learn how to drive in EVs and will own only EVs, they will go out for a Sunday drive in cars like this and experience what we experienced, what we grew up with. When we become old and crotchety and say, back in my day, cars made noise, and the noise made a hair stand on end. This is what we mean. This. Okay, Sirish, take it easy. Talk to you about the reliability of the Cedia. Nothing really goes wrong. Of course, now if you want to find parts, it is difficult. There are no dealers around, for instance, so things are not that easy. But these cars are super, super reliable. They've been there. They did that. Conquered the Dakar, conquered the World Rally Championship, conquered the Indian National Rally Championship, conquered the APRC, everything. If you wanted to win in rallying, you needed a Mitsubishi. But they just didn't keep pace with the times. We do not give Mitsubishi enough credit. All that they did in rallying on the Dakar, that injected that motorsport drug into our system that still stays alive to this day. And Mitsubishi, they were responsible for the initial car making journey of so many manufacturers. This Lancer, this was the base for the very first Hyundai Accent. In fact, the Accent was not a good enough copy of this Lancer. Mitsubishi's engines, they were the base for all the early Hyundai engines. Mitsubishi started off with Proton's car making journey. And there is also a story that when Maruti were being set up in India, they went and met the Mitsubishi officials in Japan. But back then, Mitsubishi was so huge that our officials were worried that India would be a very small part of that entire Mitsubishi universe. And that's why they did not partner with Mitsubishi. Otherwise, Mitsubishi would have come into India a long time ago and not just in the 90s. Of course, now we don't have any Mitsubishi in India. I don't even know if Mitsubishi is doing anything in India. There was talk of the Outlander coming back, but God knows, they are nowhere around. The plant has been sold off. So it is all quiet on the Mitsubishi front. But if this brand were to return, my heart would still be with them.
50, uphill 4 right, big cut. 40, 4 right. 8 left. Into hairpin left, don't cut. Slash 5 right, don't cut. 55 right, 3 left. 5 right. 45 right into 4 left. Over crest plus hairpin right. Into cut 6 left. 36 left 5 right.